Thank you once again for joining us for the business case for better data. My name is Caitlin, and I head up growth and engagement at Phantm, and I'm going to be your moderator today / timekeeper / data hype woman. I know that data does not always scream edge of your seat excitement, but today we're going to prove otherwise. I think between both Calyx and Phantm, we believe that the right data at the right resolution can unlock cost savings, can unlock supply chain resilience, and provide some seriously compelling business cases. In terms of how today is going to run, we've got 2 really quick lightning presentations from our speakers, and then we're going to jump into a bit of a moderated Q&A. And from there, we're actually going to open it up to you. So I invite you to share your questions in the chat as we're chatting, as the conversation goes on, and towards the end, we'll get the chance to ask Ed and Lauren some of those questions. And we're going to wrap up before the hour. I know we all have busy schedules, and we'll keep the conversation going after that. So on to the main event. We are joined today by 2 leaders in the space. First, I'll introduce Lauren Branson, who is the CEO and founder of Calyx, and also Edward Whitehead, my colleague, head of strategy here at Phantm. And I'm going to let them quickly introduce themselves, and then we can dive right in.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Caitlin, and beautiful welcome to country, and hello to everyone who's joined us today. So as Caitlin said, my name's Lauren Branson, the CEO of Calyx. Briefly about me, I've been in the sustainability space for nearly 25 years now. So, it's not new. I've seen a number of different iterations of what sustainability means for businesses, and primarily my background is biodiversity and conservation, sort of using data to map natural systems and their habitat. At Calyx, we support food companies, so whether that's food service, food manufacturers, as well with high definition sustainability data across their products and ingredients. And really excited about chatting today with you guys around what we do. I think that everyone who's in the sustainability or the data space or even just product optimization space is starting to see in the current economic climate that we need to dive deeper, we need to be better, we need to, our R&D cycles need to be stronger, we need to build business resilience. It's been harder than it ever has before, and we need to do it with less investment typically than we ever have before as well. So what does that mean when it comes to better data, and how does that play out across our products and ingredients? So really excited about exploring that with everyone. I'll now hand over to Ed, and just to call out that we've got contact details for both Ed and I on these slides, and we will reach out afterwards, but take a photo if you need to so that you've got our details. I'll now hand over to Ed to introduce himself.
Hey, Ed Whitehead, head of strategy at Phantm. My background is packaging per se, so soft plastics and fiber, 25 years. Predominantly in the UK, albeit I've been here for 7 years, building a business that sourced, manufactured those types of materials and packaging formats, taking those from around the world and manufacturing, eventually rolling a business into a PLC, which then provides that different perspective, new scale, new challenges, new opportunities. At Phantm for 18 months, love the work that we do here, collecting data, managing data, trying to extract value from data in the process. Packaging data being something that's massively undervalued across businesses, and it's something that is really important that we get across because there's so much value to be found. And to Lauren's point, sustainability being better doesn't pay for itself. We have to find the value inside of the opportunity. And I think that's probably a big focus of what we're going to talk about today. Where's the value inside of the data that we're collecting and gathering? So yeah, should be fun.
And I would say, and I think that Ed would agree, that I think it's really a theme that has become stronger and stronger over the past sort of 12, even 6 months, is that, the next generation of building resilient companies and supply chains and understanding all the inputs that go into our businesses is with better data and delivering an ROI across that. And it's the granularity that really helps with that. Ed, would you echo those comments?
Yeah, 100%. Incidentally, sorry, when I was referring to data, I meant data. Just,
Just like 𝗙 versus vest.
The same way this is a gilet, not a vest. But yeah, no, 100%. I think the world we're moving in, the regulatory frameworks and everything else that are moving towards, if we take our lead from Europe, this need for better information all of the time is at the forefront of what we're trying to do. And Australia is a little bit slow in getting there. We understand that, but the truth is the need is still there, the underlying need to build out this data. And that informs all the downstream systems. I know we're playing in slightly different places, Lauren, but the outputs are the same. At the end of the day, we have to find a cleaner route to the end, and circularity and more efficiency. So yeah, it should be, it's sort of really clear what we need to do if you look at what's going on in the world.
I think it is, and I think the answer is in the data or data. And I think also one thing that we both, like, both of us specialize in different areas. So like Phantm, you guys do packaging, and you do that so well with such high level of data granularity. And we focus on products and ingredients. There is an element of packaging in there, but not to the level that you guys go through. And something that we're seeing is that the value is typically in high resolution data, where you can really find the particularly cost savings, rather than sort of industry agnostic or category averages. It's really hard to get into the detail and find the opportunity when you don't have the right data resolution.
Yeah, 100%. I think also we hide a lot behind aggregated data sometimes in terms of what that means. It means we're doing okay, the direction of travel is okay, but the truth is when you get into it, it's complicated. So I think, yeah, having a bit of granularity is really important to extract value. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And one other comment about data that people often get scared of is like, oh my God, do I need to employ a new FTE to deal with this for me? But typically it's about, well, definitely the work that both Phantm and Calyx do is often extracting data from the existing data pool that you have. There is embedded value in the data that you already have. There is no need to employ, another staff member to trawl through this. And, both companies spend a lot of time matching insights and opportunity to that existing data. And then you can go on a journey of refinement over time if required, but you'd be really surprised as to how little uplift is typically required from a customer's perspective to understand opportunities embedded in your data. Okay, well, we'll jump through. I think the schedule is just a couple of lightning presentations from Ed and I, and then we'll open up to Q&A. So I get the pleasure of starting, probably because by popular vote, VEST is the winning terminology that we've got. So I'll kick off. I think just, highlighting what are global leaders doing to turn sort of sustainability from a cost to a competitive advantage. And it's really where we need to be. We hear it time and time again from our global customers is, we need to embed sustainability data and insights into our commercial operations so that it drives commercial value. It's not a standalone project anymore. It really needs to be embedded into everything we do to drive decision-making. So different areas and company or global leaders, sorry, just let me move this across, just so I can see it's coming up. So areas where you can use sustainability data at the product or ingredient level to drive business outcomes, the top line growth. We see examples of this from the Walmart and Nestle brands. Cost and risk reduction, that's something that we're going to focus on today, because I think often what we're seeing as well before we can build a business case for better data is you need to see a cost saving, and then we can look at top line growth. But make no mistake that sustainability data and insight can drive both top and bottom line improvements. Pretty rare to find that as well. Across innovation, so reducing innovation cycles by up to 70%. Sustainability or lack of sustainability insight is a huge risk across our supply chains that has the potential to erode our margins. And then also just supply availability. So being able to bring that into our R&D processes is incredibly important. Also, as we move closer to net zero commitments, even though they are wavering for some companies and countries, as we move closer towards that, you need to understand what it looks like bringing products to market that you hope to have a shelf life of, 2, 3, 4 years. What does that mean for the embedded risk that the company needs to carry Financial advantage, we see this with access to capital very much happening and still driving the market across global markets. And then lastly, brand value. So again, looking at top line growth through sustainability differentiation. What we really need to see here in the Holy Grail is that affordable sustainability. So until you can understand and see the cost savings you can drive with high resolution data, it is almost impossible to achieve sort of brand value and top line growth there. So going to jump into a very much real world example, the chocolate cake. So I apologize for everyone who's had an early morning and looking forward to lunchtime. You can just look at the pictures of this beautiful cake, but not devour it. And perhaps you'll look at it from a very different lens after we've unpacked where we can drive cost savings in the formulation of this product through high definition product data. And when you think about this mud cake, you can think about a couple of different use cases. So whether that might be in a food service environment where you're actually baking the mud cake for serving, or also in a sort of manufactured environment where this is a packaged mud cake that's sold on shelves in a retail environment. So the first step is sort of using high definition data to break down the ingredient components of this mud cake and understand, okay, what does the impact profile look like? And this is done with Calyx. We do it through a life cycle analysis methodology framework, which means that we can understand and then drill into impact across the supply chain through different stage gates as well, which is really important. What I'm showing you here is the farm to farm gate emissions for all of the ingredients within this mud cake in accordance to the FLAG guidance. I'm not going to get crazy with terminology and definitions there, but for you guys who are familiar with the FLAG, you'll understand that food products need to be, the carbon emissions, associated with food products need to be broken down into land management, land use change, and then also carbon removals if they're currently being accounted for in that supply chain. I'm very happy to have offline conversations with anyone who wants more detail around those methodologies and also just those different areas and opportunities for bringing a low impact product to market. So no surprises here in the chocolate cake. The key offenders are the cocoa powder and canola oils. So for this opportunity, just really high level, we dived into cocoa powder to try and understand, okay, how can we reduce the emissions profile of this ingredient within the mud cake? And then also, how can we do that with driving cost savings? So we were having, and I think all of you guys who are in, have anything to do with cocoa powder at the moment, you'll understand that costs are fluctuating significantly. So let's start looking at cost, because that's typically the lever for understanding the value we can drive through high definition data. So currently, commodity cost of cocoa is sitting at about $10 per kilogram of cocoa, and we're expecting that to increase significantly over the coming years as well due to increased demand for cocoa, and then also struggles or challenges in variable climates in terms of being able to grow more cocoa. So we've looked at a formula optimization that will reduce the cost of the cocoa component by up to $4 per kilo, so significant. And this is by adding a very specific formulated cocoa booster, which will actually not be subject to the same market fluctuations in price that cocoa is. So it's almost future-proofing the margins within the product, which is really exciting. And then obviously you can extrapolate that out across the sales volume and purchase volume. And cocoa is really interesting in this case because you can then look at where you're purchasing it across your portfolio outside of just the chocolate mud cake. I guarantee there will be other products that can contain cocoa in most portfolios. And then looking at the current impact for cocoa within this product, it was 35 kilograms of carbon emissions per kilogram of cocoa. What we can also start to do here, which I haven't done for this assessment, is look at supplier-specific emissions factors to break that down even further. And with the optimization of the cocoa using a cocoa buffer, we've been able to reduce that emissions profile by nearly a quarter. So you can see again how that's future-proofing this product. What we've done is we've optimized the recipe to drive a cost reduction. We haven't impacted the flavor profile or the experience. And then also driven a sort of 40% cost reduction and 50% reduction in carbon where the booster can be used. So that's just one example across one product that shows you how you can optimize recipes to drive cost saving and also future-proof for sustainability and emissions reductions. Obviously, until you get into the detail, it's really hard to understand what that looks like across a portfolio. So you can't extrapolate that across everything. I mean, for all cocoa, you can. But yeah, trying to understand, that's what I was saying before, the devil's in the detail with understanding where are the opportunities within different products and ingredients, and being able to get down to the ingredient or product level is key to understanding where those optimizations are. I'll now hand over to Ed to talk us through what this might look like from a packaging perspective.
Cheers, Lauren. Thank you very much. No, we'll come back to it after. Actually, I had a question, but I'll come back to it after in the question section. Okay, if we can just flick through into the next slide, please. I'm not in control of the slide. So for Phantm, we're really lucky. We get to work with some incredible customers, and we're doing various amounts of work around packaging predominantly. So using advisory and technology combined to deliver really nice positive outcomes for customers in terms of understanding what materials they're using in marketplace and what that means for our environment and how we can improve that. If we could just flick through. So I wanted to just talk to a single use case today. 𝗬𝗵𝗲𝗴, so Italian producer, there we go, Italian producer of incredible tomato-based products. And this is the data for Australia specifically. 47 SKUs, about 35 million individual packs per annum used, placed on market inside of Australia, pushing out through all the various retailers. So a couple of things about 𝗬𝗵𝗲, aside from the product, which is awesome, they're really a very efficient business when it comes to packaging. They're a European business, they're exporting their product globally. So they're very, very good at this. So in terms of their secondary and tertiary packaging, it's very lightweight. They're making good use of the packaging to create the structure for the transition of goods from one place to another and things like this. So it's very well thought through. So just giving them a thumbs up and thanking them for letting us use their data. And the one I want to look at, so we did an assessment of their overall portfolio. So what's the impact of transitioning those goods from Italy to Australia and outbound to customers? And this is a very high level summary. At Phantm, we focus on not dissimilar things to Lauren, Calyx, which is global warming, so CO2, fossil fuel use, what's the fossil fuel use inside of their portfolio. For the materials, predominantly it's materials based, the transport's generally quite negligible in that respect because they're using containers and efficient modes of transport. Water consumption scarcity is a big focus and becoming more of a focus, I think, both across food and packaging. So carbon is very at the forefront of our minds all of the time. Anyone sending goods across Europe or into Europe, this will become more of a pain point for you as we move forward. Being able to track and measure and account for that. And then end of life. So there's two versions of end of life. Is my product recyclable or recoverable? This is the first question. And then the second question is it recycled or recovered? And they're not the same. So we can build products to be recyclable, but that doesn't mean they will be recycled. And I think we just have to be cognizant of that as we put products and materials in marketplace. You can see here, for example, 36% of this portfolio will go to landfill. And I'm telling you, these guys are good. So these guys are good at what they do in terms of how this business is operating in marketplace. So this is a good example. If we move forward, please. Thank you, Lauren. So we did some impact modeling. We took the one product from the portfolio, which was maybe 10% of the overall volume. For this presentation, at least, we took one product. We did do it for a couple of other products. And we look at it from an optimization perspective. So we compare it to what's available on market. We compare it to itself, what's possible from a manufacturing perspective. We do not ignore the fact that a company has to position themselves as a brand, and they might have a certain style. 𝗬𝗃 have their own style, which is this particular shape of bottle. We're respectful of that and we understand that. But the truth is they're also a 150-year-old business. So they have credibility already in marketplace. So maybe they're in a good position to adapt their style to accommodate a more efficient version of the product that they sell. And what's the impact of that? So, well, it's actually quite significant, and that's what I want to show you. So we're not unempathetic to what their experience should be for the customer. But at the end of the day, we have to balance that with the commercial realities of cost of living and impact. And this is where we go with this particular narrative. So if we just flick to the next slide, please, you can see that the main difference is weight. So the diameter of the product is similar. It's slightly higher, and it's slightly heavier. So it's 23 grams heavier than the competitors. So this is a product that's made of glass. So it's very recyclable. It's a clear glass product. It's a really fit for purpose product. It sustains its own weight in transit. So they stack the bottles on top of themselves with a very simple wrap on a very skinny tray. They're very good at what they do, which optimizes for containers and everything else. It's very efficient. It's very thought out. But 23 grams amounts to 87.98 tons. And I think this is the thing that everyone forgets. The physical mass of packaging is insane that we place on market. This is one product amongst 30 of passatas in store, okay, if you like. And a 23 gram saving on this single product alone is nearly 88 tons of material. Just let that sink in for a second in terms of what that means. So let's take that to the commercial side, the money. What does that mean in terms of money? So we took a very base level and we worked with the customer on this. So just take a really base level, such as what's the cost of a ton of glass, for example, from a manufactured point of view. So materials optimization delivers about $250,000. And then there's a logistic saving. If you continue to optimize, so you might reduce the height by 10 mil, you actually now get an extra layer of packaging inside of the container. So you have less containers, the carbon footprint is dispersed over more products. So everything reduces quite significantly. But there's circa, if we flick onto the next slide, please, Lauren, thank you. 300,000, thank you, there we go. I knew the maths was there somewhere. So $308,000 worth of savings to be realized by making some quite minor alterations. Now that's part of a much bigger conversation around really efficient energy being used at the glass plant, green energy being used to make the glass. It's part of a much bigger conversation. What's possible from an optimization perspective? Can we make it smaller, lighter, slightly broader to accommodate those changes? It's what's possible is what we're trying to point out to the customer. This customer is very receptive to what's possible because Australia is one of a number of overseas markets, not just us. So whatever impact they do for us, it's times by 10 because of where they send product in the world. The impact savings and additional to the commercial savings aren't insignificant. This is on one product, remember, which is 10% of their portfolio. So reduction in fossil fuel use, reduction in global warming, carbon impact, and water consumption. Once we add these up across some of the other lines that we looked at, and as I say, 𝗬𝗃 are probably one of the better, more efficient businesses that we deal with in terms of how they think about their packaging as a very established business. So just to finish, and I think Lauren made a similar reference. What does it look like? This is not new. Unilever are a global business. Quietly in the background for many, many years, they've been doing this type of thing. And the best example I like is around sort of very liquid or washing detergent type products and the way that they can make these things concentrated. So they have since 2008, this is a public article, by the way, we didn't do this work, just so we're absolutely clear. they saved €1.5 billion by creating smaller washing up bottles, in effect, because they've increased the concentration of the product inside of the bottle. So this is product, so this is the food, and this is the packaging, or this is the material inside the bottle, working together to create a better outcome. If you actually talk to Unilever, which I did at the end of last year on a different project, they could do this again, by the way. So they could actually double the concentration of the liquid, reduce the bottle by half further. And the only reason they don't do it, I guess, unofficially, is because it changed. The whole market has to do it. They come out of step with market and the price point changes. So it's funny, what's possible is so much more than what we have quite a lot of the time. But what we have to do is create an environment where we really can make these changes and people accept them as we move forward. So that'd be.
I think also to echo, Ed, what you've just wrapped up on there as well is like Unilever have got the data to understand they can do it again. So they're making commercial decisions that impact strategies that might come out to play in 5 years' time. So they can't actually do it right now because they'd be struggling at that price point, but they understand and they can see where they need to go to shape that market and where they should be investing to be able to optimize their operations. So incredibly powerful whether you decide to act on this data straight away or just understand how it can shape strategy going forward.
Make a plan, because these things take time as well. Like they take time.
Yeah. I'll now hand back to Caitlin, who's going to wrap it up and open up for questions. But Ed, fantastic presentation, and really love seeing the clear business value that you can drive through packaging optimization. And I think what we're hoping to do today is really empower everyone on the call to understand, or with the insights they need to build a business case internally to build resilient businesses and effective supply chains with better data.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you so much, Lauren and Ed. I really appreciated that chat. As when I speak to both of you, or either of you, I should say, I always learn so much. And I really appreciate the generosity in sharing this in an open forum. I've just reminded everyone in the chat, if you do have any questions for Lauren and Ed, feel free to post them in there and we'll get a chance to ask them. First, I wanted to share an article that the World Economic Forum published in late May, so just a few weeks ago, incredibly current. And it's all about the strategic value of sustainability data. So their statement being sustainability data is the new financial data. And they shared a couple of statistics in this article, which I'll be happy to circulate after the webinar. One of which that really jumped out to me was what you see on screen here. So obviously there have been a lot of shifts in global sentiment around climate reporting. And I thought it was really interesting that of the survey the WEF conducted, 85% of respondents plan to move forward with disclosures, regardless of what was happening with regulation, regardless of what was happening with trends in the marketplace. So I guess maybe it could be an interesting place to start, Lauren and or Ed, this framing of sustainability data as the new financial data. From each of your vantage points, what do you think it will take for businesses to treat packaging and ingredient data with the same rigor, with the same priority, with the same urgency as financial reporting?
I think it's actually understanding. I'm not sure about, and Ed would love to hear your thoughts on that, but when we start working with customers and surface this sort of impact data, and should follow up on Ed's comment that we look far beyond carbon when we assess the impact of food products and ingredients, from carbon, biodiversity, water, and a number of others we can dive, and deforestation, dive into. But it's typically the first time that companies have actually seen this data across their product or ingredient portfolios. Once they see it, and I love it because the work we do touches multidisciplinary teams, and once teams from procurement to R&D to global sustainability, to sustainability heads, or even C-suite and business strategists, when they start to see this data, the light bulbs go off. And we often do this in a sort of a multi-stakeholder briefing because it is new. Like everyone is experts in their own domain, but sustainability is new. They're expected to now embed it into everything they do. But the light bulbs start to go off and they see the opportunities. So I think until the data becomes tangible for them and experts can work on it with their deep industry knowledge across whatever that is, R&D, procurement, they'll start to see the opportunities, and then it can be embedded across operations like financial data. But if they don't have the data, it's really hard to drive those opportunities. So I think it does sort of, at what point do we find that do we reach a tipping point where they value it as much as financial data? I think we're at the tip of that iceberg, to be honest, because we do see market leaders, particularly in the food space and with regulations as well, driving harder than others. And so they become little proof points. So you might be looking at that across a subset of a company's portfolio, that they deliver into one of these really innovative leaders like Unilever or your PepsiCos or your Nestle's or your Mars's. And then that builds the business case that flows through. And I think that it's also a theme that we're seeing across the board with what we do, and I'm sure that Phantm are the same, is that sustainability then becomes everybody's job, but you can also see an ROI across that, whether it's the supplier, whether it's the manufacturer, whether it's the retailer at the end. So actually getting those use cases is really important, and businesses can start to act on it. Ed, I'll hand over to you to see what you're seeing from your area.
Gathering the data is actually the start point. So everyone's start point is slightly different. And I think that's important to understand. Large businesses have data, but whether they've collected that data for the purpose of analysing it or not to give themselves commercial advantage is not always clear. And that would be and then there's some businesses that don't have any meaningful data around packaging specifically. So they're at the start of a journey. So it's much harder to explain to a customer the importance of having the data, and then to take them on this journey of how that drives improvement, how that can drive cost advantage, how that can drive change or efficiencies. So I think the challenge is understanding where the customer is first, and then sort of jumping in at that point and making sure that we're collecting the right data so that we can extract value from it. So that would be my take on. So to answer the actual question, it's hugely valuable. Okay, we've both given you two examples of very granular examples of having some more information than you had before, and then what that means. You can make a 40% reduction on an ingredient saving. Okay, you can save 90 tons of material on a single glass bottle. Okay, so these are two very simple examples of the importance of data. And by the way, both Calyx and Phantm have numerous examples of this. It's not these are in isolation because we've got a presentation today. It's so important that we just realize that, but we also understand not everyone's in the same space, would be my take. We're happy to sort of go to where you are and build out that muscle.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I really like actually that you both chose to zoom in on one SKU in particular to demonstrate the impact that you can have from just potentially small change. I want to dig a little bit deeper into one of the things that you mentioned, Lauren, and then we're going to hop into the chat because there's some great questions coming through. But you talked about multi-stakeholder engagement or delivery, and I really like that. It means that whoever you're delivering it to does believe in embedding sustainability across the business. And we've talked about commercial ROI or commercial value. What do you think about team ROI or organizational ROI? Does better data shift how teams collaborate? Does it affect their decision making? What other sort of impact do you see there in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. It's a softer ROI. So I think when you're talking to CEOs and business leaders about, like, does this investment return, they need to have those hard ROIs, so top or bottom line. And at the moment, it's probably bottom line where you need to be driving it. But definitely you see, like, whether it's a ROI on staff retention and showing that, as a business, we deliver on integrity against our values. So over the past sort of 3 years, we've seen an evolution of sort of setting targets, whether that's signing up for STBI, whether that's understanding where we want to go in the market with sustainability. And the work that we do for food companies is really where the rubber hits the road and you actually start to drive change. And so that empowers staff to work harder, to realize that, you know, as my manager's hammering down on me to drive cost savings across whatever I do, you can say, hey, I've got cost savings and I'm saving the planet. That feels really good, and it gives you a purpose to drive those cost savings, which is really important. And then I think the collaboration across businesses and up and down supply chains is something that we talk a lot about, and it's often one of those like throwaway lines like net zero, we're going to get there. And I think it's actually being able to show that how this data can help do that, where that data flows within the business, so it actually becomes a tangible collaboration. I mean, just this morning we were talking to a US-based partner about working across over 3,000 farms in India to understand from smallholder farms what's the impact of their growing practices. How can we then surface that data across the region to then empower buyers of those commodities or those ingredients to, one, understand the footprint, and then also translate that into better products. So you can actually start to see it because there's something tangible. So it does help with that collaboration. Yeah.
And that piece around not only customer retention, but employee retention is such an important one. I mean, both the market for food or consumer packaged goods is incredibly competitive, as is the job market. So being able to kind of peek behind the curtain and flesh out some of those more comprehensive benefits is a really interesting piece for me.
Yeah.
Sorry. We have a couple of questions coming through. One in particular that does relate, this is from Rose, which thank you for joining us today, Rose. Nice to see your name pop up. What is some advice you can provide around the complexities to act on data findings and maintain momentum to change outcomes? For example, reformulation takes resource and time. Redesigning packaging assumes bandwidth to execute.
So, I feel like under the pump, Rose. You go ahead.
Yeah, so Rose actually asked the question before as well. So I'll field both, and maybe you come in on the second one, Lauren, again, a little bit from your perspective. So the first one was specifically around the business case for recycled content. It's a really great question. And as this webinar only goes for about another 10 minutes, I'll try and keep this really brief because that's an hour response. Regulation would help, Rose. If we had really clear regulation around the value of having recycled content inside of our packaging materials, that would help. An effective framework around pricing, for example, the pricing being enough to facilitate recycled content being a good actor process. So that's a bit complicated, but if the fee of placing the product on market is high enough if you don't use recycled content, but then the benefit of including recycled content is high enough to offset the fee. So we create this circular momentum. We don't actually have either of those things in place at the moment, but that's coming, right? We know it's coming. We know that framework is in front of us. So to actually build the business case at the moment is really hard. But what I would say to you is, it takes time to implement those material streams, to make them efficient and make them useful. So start the process, because what you do need to change inside of your business is how you work, because using those type materials is harder than using conventional virgin materials. So the business case is hard, but it is coming and it takes time. So balancing the response would be my approach to the first part. The second one is a little bit more straightforward, which I take from that question, and Lauren will have a go at it, is it's the cost of change. Okay, that's the way I'm summarizing that. I would say the way I would help you is we'd prioritize what you should change. You can't change everything. So let's look at the portfolio, understand the portfolio as a data set. That enables us to prioritize quite quickly what's important, and then we focus on the things where we create the biggest impact and or return on investment. So that's how I would approach cost of change, because you're right, it's very hard to do it for everything. You shouldn't try and do it for everything.
Yeah, I think, Ed, great answer. My one thing I would add to that is that it's about, sustainability is not a standalone project. It's embedding it into your business cycles. So R&D is a timely, cost-effective exercise. Reformulation, sorry, is a timely, high-cost exercise. Sorry, but if you're embedding that at the very beginning, so every new product that comes through, and when there's a review of formulation as well, which happens on a periodic cycle, make sure every time something comes through R&D, you have an ESG lens across that at the ingredient level. Again, you don't have to act on it straight away, but at least you can see, you can understand, okay, this product coming to market has this potential impact. So this is what it means for us. So it's not about adding more work on. And something that we spend a lot of time doing and specialize in is interoperability of data. So when this data will become as prolific and is as important as financial data, there's probably not many decisions that you make in a business without a financial lens across it. And just imagine an extra column there, an additional attribute that is your carbon, biodiversity, or water footprint that you will start reporting and making decisions based on. And you can't always optimize for everything. There's a trade-off. So being aware of what those trade-offs are really important. But I think embedding data into existing business cycles is really important and where it needs to go. And I think you can look at the evolution of this space is very similar to digital. It sort of starts, it was, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it starts as a side project. Someone's like, and it's even AI, it's happening with a side project with people who love, nerds who are into computers and like, oh, wow, we could have this automated process. And now it's just part of what we do. It's just part of our workflows. Everyone works on a computer. Everyone's, digitally integrated. And it's the same with sustainability. It's moving from these little side projects or strategic working groups into something that everyone at every touch point in their business is dealing with and making decisions against. And so I think that's how you can drive, again, those cost efficiencies out of embedding sustainability data into your everyday decisions.
I think my take from that one question alone is we have our next webinar topic. How do you build a business case? I mean, I think that's a really important question, and I imagine, both something that both Phantm and Calyx have experience with. We have a few questions coming through. This one is.
I'm mindful of Kate, you're in charge. Go on, sorry.
No, that's okay. Is it about time?
Brenda Rocha, would that be right?
That's the question I was going to ask.
Yeah, so that I'll have a quick go at that one because I think it's a really interesting question. So what, I guess, is like, so what? It's got recycled content. My position on that is there's loads of really nice evidence around businesses that have a point of view or a strategy in market around what they stand for. So I would say for me, the current situation is don't look at that through a recycling lens or a value lens. It's about market position lens. What do you stand for as a business? It's an intent, isn't it? Recycled content is an intent. This is how we perceive the world. And that should add value. It should aid the experience. So designing packaging that includes recycled content that is evident or it's apparent, so make it part of the experience, because yes, it's hard to justify at the moment otherwise, especially in Australia. It's much more justifiable in other countries. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it, because we absolutely should. I'm a massive advocate of circularity, let's just be clear, but I'm also incredibly pragmatic. So if we're going to use it, let's use it for commercial advantage and experience for the customer would be my positioning at the moment. And we can do that. There's so much stuff we can do around that, make it part of the fun of buying a thing. Would be my take on that, Brenda.
Ed, just to add to that as well, and I'm sure you'll have some other thoughts. A couple of areas where we see that percentage of recycled material in packaging playing out is a impact reduction. So up to 50% reduction in carbon emissions associated with a packaging material. So if you're chasing carbon reduction, obviously you need to understand the cost associated with that. And then, amazing research that's been done over the past couple of years, even since we've moved into sort of harder economic conditions, is that packaging is always over-indexed by the consumer as an indication of sort of sustainability and commitment and values by a brand. So definitely, I think if you can call it out and hero it in line with your brand values, I think there is potentially top-line growth that you could achieve.
it's actually in that article that Caitlin referenced, the World Economic Forum. There's some really cool stats around sort of investor perception, market perception, and this is why that, you know, what we're seeing in the world now is that the money will pour into those companies that are behaving more. I know it's really hard when you look at the news and what's going on, and it's hard, right? But the truth is, if you look at what's going on in the world in terms of investment, you know, there's plenty of money being put into those spaces of these companies that are ethically more positioned to do better things as we move forward. A really high level, you know, in terms of where that investment's coming, and it makes you more robust to align with that financial model of robustness as well. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah, it was a great read, and as I said, happy to share the link to it for everyone after today. Just looking at the time, I made a commitment at the beginning that we would end before the top of the hour, so this might be our last question. And Lauren, it's actually for you, from Michael. Re the cocoa booster formula, how do clients approach the relationship of a cost reduction strategy transitioning to more processed formulations with respect to health concerns on the consumption of those ingredients, especially for children?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, again, the devil's in the detail. That was just one example that we've called out in terms of how can we drive a reduction there across that that mud cake, and it was a formulated product. What we typically see is when we're driving, and I guess also comes back to Rose's question, like how can we actually bring this ESG lens into everything that we do? So what I just showed you there was the ESG and cost lens in isolation. I didn't actually call out the health, you know, a health benefit or lens and understand, so we can bring that into decision making. But what we do typically see with the transition to more sustainable formulas, independent of what I've just shown you, is that we can actually follows the clean labeling approach as well. So moving to less complex ingredients, simpler formulations, so what you do actually align with, and where market trends in Europe are heading towards as well, is this better for you and better for the planet. It does actually play out when you can, when you understand the detail and at the ingredient level. Obviously, that one probably wasn't a very good example to show you particularly around that health benefit, but I haven't actually got the nutritional benefit there of the cocoa booster and what's actually in it to be able to understand that too. So definitely really good call out. I think it's important, as I said before, there are trade-offs, but making decisions aware of what they are. And so you add that third lens, which is nutrition, and let's find something that works, that actually ticks all those buckets. Or maybe you can't find something that fits everything, but can do a quarter of it all. Or yeah, it's just about making informed decisions in line with what's important for your business.
One of the other things we often talk about at Phantm is making incremental change. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be everything tomorrow. But step by step, we can make improvements. That's often a more sustainable, to overuse the term, way to create that change. We have one last, oh, sorry.
I was just going to add to Ed's comment there around understanding costs and, you know, the percentage of recycled material as well, and building that business case. The first step is understanding the data and what it looks like. And you'll often see with these things as well, like, you know, if regulation's coming, if the understanding the cost of reformulation now, or running a few specific tests where you need to or can run them as well, to understand what that business case might look like at scale is much more cost effective doing that now, as opposed to waiting in 5 years' time when you've got regulation breathing down your throat. You can extrapolate that out and say it might cost me $5 per ingredient to optimize now versus, I don't know, $5,000 per ingredient to optimize when I have to do it under speed with less opportunity. And you know, I've already contracted all of my suppliers on a 5-year term horizon that I can't actually get out of. So yeah, devil's in the detail again.
I'll quickly have a go at that Benjamin question. FMCG companies currently work on sustainable projects here in Australia, a number of them. So as a percentage, I would say quite high. And I would just put the framing around that is, I think there's an awful lot of work because we see it. We're lucky, we're engaged in that space. We deal with some very large to medium-sized organizations, and there is a lot of effort going on in the background. They are ready. So readiness is key. Whether they deploy or not is slightly different, okay? Because deployment is a different thing from being ready, but the work is happening in the background. They know how to deploy when the time is right. And that'll just be about allocation of capital. Are we ready to go? What are the reasons to go? But the work is being done, and we see it every day, and we contribute to that. And that's, so I'm taking hope from that what I see with the customers. It's just about timing. So timing is coming, and the things get released, but I think we'll see a flood of this stuff, especially as regulations and things tighten. So yeah, it's good.
I think, Ed, to add to that, I would say that all of the global leaders and sort of in the FMCG space, it rapidly rolls up to sort of 6 or 12 brands that dominate the market. I would say that they're all moving or have moved on it behind the scenes, as you said. So they're ready. And I think that, you know, for challenger brands or independents, you need to understand how you deliver on sustainability or what the opportunities are. And it's not really sustainability. It's just, you know, the next lens of business that we need to operate through. I think also we're probably seeing an evolution of sustainability in the market at the moment, where it was these side projects. It typically had a higher cost associated with them. And, you know, with the work that we do, we're getting pushed as well. Like, how can you drive that ROI? What is the business case? And so it is getting tighter. But if you're lagging behind that opportunity and that next wave of insight, then it will be much harder for you to compete, and to meet, you know, consumer or investor or retailer sentiment becomes harder for you, because you need to bridge a gap if you haven't sort of engaged at the right time and started on that journey yourselves.
Thank you. I've got to take the mic back because we are at time. So that formally brings us to an
one last
sorry.
thing, Caitlin. I
You have
accept
5 seconds.
I accept it's a best based on the comments, not to 𝗙𝗍. Okay, I'm with you now. I've moved on.
Ugh. We love to see that's incremental change, Ed. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Thank you.
One step at a time. I want to say a huge thanks to you both, Ed and Lauren, for sharing your insights and your learnings. You know, it's clear that when we treat this data as a strategic asset, the commercial opportunities really do start to open up. I want to express a really big thank you for everyone attending today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen in. Thank you for your questions and your comments in the chat. Thank you for settling the great vest debate. If our conversation today has sparked any ideas for you or any questions, if you want to go deeper, both Phantm and Calyx would love to keep the conversation going. So we're going to send out a follow-up email, as I said. We might share a link to the recording and that World Economic Forum article I mentioned. Feel free to reach out to either of us if you wanted to have a more specifically directed conversation. So on behalf of all of us, thanks again. We hope to see you at another webinar soon. And until then, take care. May your data be clean and organized and comprehensive. Thanks, folks.